Neighborhood Watch. I'm Matt.
And I'm Pat.
I'm Abe.
I'm Brett.
Hey,
I'm staring at these lines in the screen, so I'm sorry I'm distracted.
Happy Wednesday.
We have a special guest. We had this gentleman on 2 years ago when we went to the Harlan House. His name's Sohail Siddiqi, and welcome back to the Neighborhood Watch.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be back.
Yeah. So we visited with you 2 years ago when your initial project was being kicked off or talked about, and we toured the house, which you kind of told us the story about, but this has kind of been the topic more on Nextdoor lately. It's been getting quite the conversation. So why don't you update us where the project's at?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for organizing this. I think it is very useful for us to communicate with the neighbors and address some of the concerns they have. And just one point of correction, I have been at it for about 5 years now. I bought this property back in 2017. Our first concept review was in 2017. When we last spoke back in 2019, November, was right before our second concept review in front of the Planning Commission. And we had a very successful review with them, a lot of supporting comments. And at the time, surprisingly, there were very little, if any, opposition to our project. What happened was, since then, once we got the unanimous support of the Planning Commission to move forward on this project, we then kind of finalized our design and then submitted our design application to the planning staff. And then it went through the series of processes that they have in place. Mm-hmm. And it became a little bit more cumbersome because of the historic house we have on our property. It had to go through a CEQA review, which is the California Environmental Quality Act, under which anytime there is a historic structure involved, they need to go through a set of processes to make sure the impact from the historic perspective. And that whole process took a long time. We have been at it since 2019, fulfilling various requirements. One of the first things we did after our concept review confirmation we got from Planning Commission to move forward, we reached out to the California Office of Historic Preservation. And we kind of described the house to them and asked them if this house has any historic significance to them and what can be done. So we had a good dialogue with them. And frankly, at that time, they were not willing to put that on the California Historic Register until we meet certain criteria. And so what they suggested that we should hire a consultant. They have a series of independent consultants that office works with. So they suggested that we should hire one of them and get a very objective perspective what needs to be done. So that's what we did. And so I'm just talking about the things that have taken a long time. So we engaged a person, Kara Burnswell. She's very well known in this field. Very well respected as well. And she wrote a very large report in terms of what we need to do to preserve this house. So if we preserve the house based on the guidelines that is provided by her, which then we will be entitled to put this house on the California Historic Register and potentially on the National Register. Now, from the California Office of Historic Preservation, this house is relevant to them because of its Gothic architecture, which was very sort of prominent back in 1850s era. And according to them, if we can preserve the exterior of the house to the original form it was in, that would be sufficient from their requirements perspective. So that's what we did, and we have been kind of working with the city planning staff. They had to go through additional steps, including the impact on the environment. There are so many other aspects to it. Whether are we preserving the trees that we need to preserve, or just the other kind of impact that you could have on the environment. So that whole process has taken 2 years now, more than 2 years. Finally, this has all come to head after fulfilling all of the requirements. The city has now finalized their all the requirements. We went in front of the planning commission, and to our surprise, I have been taken aback a little bit with the opposition we have received from the neighbors. And I must acknowledge that up until 2 years ago, we have had a very proactive dialogue with the neighbors, and we had been keeping them informed, and we have been receiving a lot of input, and there has been a lot of dialogue back and forth. Never, I would claim that we got unanimous support, but then we were able to convert a few people on our side. But the gap of this last 2 years has really done something different. So this time around, when this project has come for public hearing, all of a sudden, all the neighbors around us have really taken a very strong stand against this project. And the issue there is, there's a little bit of a history behind this. This property was owned by Harlan family, the sole surviving heir, Joel Gilderman, who lives across the street from our house. He owned this property. When the Greystone homes and the townhomes behind our properties were built, at that time, he had given the indication that he would be willing to donate this land to create a park. Now, and that's how that designation of park came into picture, and it is creating a lot of confusion and frankly setting some false expectation for the neighbors. Yes, it was designated for the park, but then he decided to develop that piece of land, and he wanted to build some multifamily homes over there. Mm-hmm. And in that process, the whole designation got changed again back in 2010 or so. It was changed back from park designation to multifamily medium density housing. Now, neighbors are reacting, and a lot of the neighbors have been living there for 20 plus years now. For whatever reason, they felt they were promised to have a park here. And now all of a sudden, this property is being converted into a commercial use property. And it is not setting well with them, and I can relate to that. But then there is a lot of anti-development sentiment that I tell you, anytime there's a development project in any city, neighbors come and they oppose development projects. So right now, that's where we are. Before I dive into too much details of all the opposition, I just wanted to bring you up to speed. This is where we are. We have had 2 hearings. There was one joint hearing with the City Council and Planning Commission. Then we had second hearing with the Planning Commission, and the third hearing is scheduled for February 15th. And then after that, we will have 2 more hearings with the City Council. And then they will decide whether they will approve our application or whatever decision they will make. So this is where we are at.
Got it. Wow. Yeah, that's good info. And I think we were talking before, like I know a lot of the complaints I've seen are people complaining about increased traffic and the need for a traffic light and parking, which you'll have given the proposed plans for your space there. But like something's going to be built there, even if it was a park, there would be traffic. I think people got to reason through some of these things. If you don't use it, it's going to be done for something, and probably could be more impactful.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I'm with you, man.
Yeah,
I hear you. I guess my question is, like, what would you like to tell the neighbors right now that are going to watch this tomorrow to kind of get them to be on your side?
Well, we'll do. I think it's an uphill battle to get everybody on our side, but I think it is very important for them to understand the reality and what is a pragmatic solution that can be actually the pragmatic solution to what to be developed on that property. Now, let's talk about the traffic piece of it. Now, when you look at various development options you have, the least amount of traffic that will be generated will be through the senior assisted living project. The reason is all of our tenants are well into their 80s and early 90s.
Right. They're not going anywhere.
They are not going to be driving the cars. They will not be allowed to have cars on the premise anyhow. And we will have a shuttle service for them to commute to church, to shopping, to other recreational activities that they want to undertake. So as far as the tenants are concerned, they are not going to generate any traffic. The only traffic that will be generated will be through two sources. One will be the staff that will be working on the facility, and second, the visitors that will visit the tenants over there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me take the second one first, and this is a sad reality. The sad reality is when people come to these facilities, there are the loneliest bunch of people. There's very minimal visitation that takes place with these people. And I tell you that from firsthand experience I've had with my mother. My mother, before I bought this property, was in a nursing facility, and I used to visit over there, and I used to see people longing for their relatives to come and visit them. So the point I'm making is, yes, there will be visitors coming, but it will not add as significant traffic impact as people think. And then when the visitors will visit, it will be mostly around weekends or in the evening hours when there's no traffic impact. The traffic impact right now, do you have a question, Patrick?
Go ahead and I'll ask my question.
No, so the second aspect of is the traffic that will be impacted because of the staff that is working over there. Now, this is where our early collaboration with the neighbors come into play. When we engaged with them, when we were working on the design, that was one of the key concerns they raised, that there'll be traffic impact because of our facility. And one thing we said that, okay, we don't think that will impact because the way our staff will work, they will work in 3 shifts, but we can go a little bit further. And what we will do is we'll schedule our staff in shift changes as such that they will not be around the key traffic time, i.e. the school hours or the business hours. So what we have done is we have created 3 shifts. Our first shift will start at 6 a.m. They will wrap up their shift at 2 o'clock in the afternoon before the school rush traffic starts. And then second shift will start at 2 o'clock. So that change will take place. And the third shift will start at 10 o'clock. So that's how the shifts will work. So with that, there will not be a significant impact on traffic on that particular street from our project. The current issue we have on that street is, as you know, San Ramon Valley Boulevard, because of the school traffic in the morning to Cal High, to some of the, they have actually done away with the U-turns.
Yes.
Right? So people, what they are doing to bypass that, they turn right on West Side Drive and then turn around, make a U-turn, and they'll go back on San Ramon Valley Boulevard and make a left turn to go on to Montevideo. And that has created a lot of issues. Now, that issue has been there for years. I used to live a street right behind that on Woodborough Way, and that exactly used to happen over there too. You know, those 2 streets have suffered from this issue all along. But it has nothing to do with our project. And if people think that we will create the traffic and we will endanger their children or their communities, I don't think that's fair.
Yeah. That's a good point. You bring up good items there.
Yeah.
My question was, and we'll kind of look to wrap it up here because of the time frame, but a lot of good information. My question again was, how many residents are you looking to have there?
So it will be a facility. It has the maximum capacity of 84 beds, 48 units, basically. It's at 48 rooms. So some of the rooms are, 36 rooms are double occupancy and rest of them are single occupancy.
Okay.
Now, but you know, that's the ideal scenario. Typically, these kind of facilities operate at 80 to 85% occupancy.
Yeah.
Good. Well, that's good to know. You guys got any more questions or?
So the hearing is 15th of February?
Yeah, it is on 15th of February. So let me kind of paint a picture for you. Now, I bought this property when I retired from my day job. I took my retirement funds, I bought this property. And the idea was for me to build this facility, and that will, I mean, obviously it was for profit. Obviously, we wanted to make sure that we have a source of income coming out, rather than investing our retirement elsewhere, we invested in this property. For the last 5 years, I have seen zero return on investment. And for another 2 to 3 years, even if this project gets approved, we will not see any return because it has to go through the construction process and ramp up process. Well, we are looking for an additional 4 years before I'll see any return on my investment. Now, if I want to present 3 options. Now, neighbors are talking about they only want park, but literally there are 3 options that I am seeing as the developer. The most ideal one from my perspective would be to build this facility to allow our seniors to stay in our neighborhood, basically. And we want to be able to walk up to our elderlies in this type of facility. With that, we are also giving something back to the community, and that is we are preserving the Harlan House. Now, look at the history. For the last 30 years, city has been trying to preserve this house, but they never had the funds for themselves. They didn't want to spend the money to preserve this house at this location or elsewhere. Many other people have tried, but nobody has come up with a tangible proposal until myself. We have promised that we will not only keep the house on the same location where it has been for the last 150 years, we'll preserve it with our own funds. We are not asking anybody to give us any funds to preserve that. So that's we are giving back. We are preserving the heritage of the city. That is the most, from my perspective, that is the best possible use of this property.
Mm-hmm.
Now, neighbors want a park. Now that can still happen. It may surprise you. You can still make it a park. But the thing that neighbors need to understand, it is a privately owned land. Mm-hmm. City has no legal right to take my land that I have bought from a private seller to convert that and designate that to a park. What that means is somebody has to buy this piece of land from me and then commit to making it a park and preserve the house. Those are the 2 requirements, right? Now, this discussion has taken place long time ago with the city, what it would take to preserve the house to buy this land. And frankly, city just did not have the appetite to invest in this project. I think they were fatigued with the David Glass House preservation, if you recall, back in early 2000, and the amount of money that went into that was unbelievable. Now, when you look at the land cost in city of San Ramon right now, for a multi-family, medium density housing, land cost is anywhere from $6 million to $7 million per acre. That is the going cost for the land. Somebody will have to buy this land at a fair market value and then invest few extra $1 million to preserve the house and make it a park. Now, if residents can convince the city officials to do that, I'll be happy to engage in a productive dialogue for that scenario. I'll honestly discuss that. But the reality is, based on my previous discussion with this city has no appetite. The neighbors have the opportunity. Now, look at the neighborhood that we live in. All of these neighbors are financially fairly well off. They can definitely pool money and come up with fund to buy this land from me. And I can still assure you, I will still pitch in to help preserve the house. I may not do 100% now, but I will at least share a little bit of burden of towards the preservation cost of the house. I'll do that. But that's one option if neighbors really, really want to make this a park. The third option, which I have, is if this project is not approved, then my next option is going to be to figure out what is the best possible use of this land, which is also economically viable for me, and also that addresses the need of the city. Guess what is the biggest need in the city? The city is hurting for housing.
Yeah.
But more importantly, they're hurting for low income housing, affordable housing. Now, for me, I will get the highest possible density if I go to the city and say, I want to build a low income housing project.
Right.
Because state will be behind with me. That decision then will be taken away from the city official. It will be based on the state laws that are in play right now that are on our side. Neighbors probably would not like this option. The reason is I will build the property. I will rent this property out at average median income, but the housing, the type of tenants who will go in there, it will not be my choice. It will be the housing authority that will dictate who I will take as the tenant. And rest assured, I own a project near Modesto, a 40-unit, 100% low-income housing project. I get all my tenants through housing authority. These are Section 8 people or low-income people that fall in that category. Now, I have a lot of tax incentive to build that project, by the way. I can do that. But trust me, neighbors need to understand, they need to understand what they're asking for. They may sway with the opposition, with all the petitions that are going on, the surveys that are going on. They may sway the elected official to not approve my project. But the second option that I will turn around and go after right away is going to be that housing project. And trust me, there's a little leverage anybody will have with that project.
Yeah. A lot of issues around there and
Yep.
some concern. So you bring up some good points, and we'll follow you after the next phase and maybe just get a update from you about what's going on. And
Yeah. Look, I have been trying to reach out to the two homeowners association, one, the condominiums that are behind my property and the Greystone homes that are across from our property. I've reached out to neighbors. Now, it is funny. I held an open house a few weeks ago at my property just to invite neighbors to reorient them with the project. And very little participation. Very few people showed up. But couple of people who showed up, they were downright nasty. In fact, one of the person was about to choke me, and the president of the homeowners association was there. She was watching him. He was getting so animated. He was threatening me with his physical posture. My son and my wife was there with me. They were all watching. I don't know if there's somebody recorded this conversation, but I'm telling you, people are getting nasty out there. It is becoming very bullish. My friends who live in the neighborhood are complaining that these are people who are showing up at their house in the form of gang and kind of forcing them to sign these petitions or be part of the survey. I can handle all of that, but I'm telling you that the more productive way to deal with this is to engage in a dialogue, in a rational dialogue, to make sure we hear out each side. There is a little bit of a give and take here. No, I don't have to win 100% my way, and neighbors can get it, but we can come to some compromise as we did in the past, where we adjusted our project design, our approach, staff model, and so on, and the work schedule based on the input we were getting from neighbors. I think that is the right approach to deal with this thing. But I am prepared, by the way, just to deal with all three scenarios that are in front of us, and happy to engage with neighbors if they want to reach out to me, how to buy this land, and what it would take for them to develop this into a park. I can give them a plan. I have been at it for 5 years. I know all of the scenarios, and I can help them with that. but they're going to have to make sure that they come up with some funds on their own.
Great.
Sure. Sohail,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah,
for
really
updating
appreciate your
us.
time.
Well, yeah, good to understand, and thanks for sharing, the different scenarios and it's good information.
Thank you. Thank you so much for organizing this. This is very helpful, and happy to come on board anytime you want to talk about this.
All right.
Any questions, I'll be happy to.
It'll
get
go out
this out on
tomorrow
the air
morning.
tomorrow,
Okay? We'll
and,
send you the
yeah.
link.
You'll have the link.
All right. Thank you so much.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.